In 2019, Daniela Lace left a Marilyn Manson concert in Ontario while heavily intoxicated and drove the wrong way down a residential street, crashing into a home and rupturing a gas line. 15 minutes later, the house exploded, destroying 4 homes, injuring 7 people including first responders, and causing an estimated $10 to $15 million in damage. Lace was sentenced to 3 years in prison after pleading guilty to impaired driving causing bodily harm. In a bizarre twist, she and her father later sued the concert venue's alcohol vendor, claiming they were responsible for overseeing her and allowing her to drive drunk. The Bodies exhibit, which displays real human cadavers preserved through plastination, has long been shrouded in controversy due to allegations that many of the bodies were sourced from Chinese prisons without consent. Human rights groups believe that some of the corpses may belong to executed prisoners or political dissidents, including members of persecuted groups like Falun Gong. In 2008, the exhibit's parent company was forced to admit that it couldn't verify the origins of the bodies, posting a disclaimer that some remains may have come from Chinese prisoners. Visitors may unknowingly be viewing the dissected bodies of people who died under horrific conditions. In 2014, comedian Tracy Morgan was critically injured in a car crash on the New Jersey Turnpike when a Walmart tractor-trailer suddenly slammed into his limo van. The collision killed his close friend and fellow comedian James McNair and left Morgan with a broken femur, broken ribs, broken nose, and a traumatic brain injury. Doctors initially feared he might not survive, and he remained in a coma for over a week. The truck driver had reportedly been awake for more than 24 hours, prompting Morgan to sue Walmart for negligence. The company ultimately settled the lawsuit outside of court, and Tracy has publicly forgiven the driver. In 1980, a man named John Burgess, who had lost over $750,000 while gambling, attempted to extort money from Harvey's Resort Hotel in Nevada by planting one of the most sophisticated homemade bombs the FBI had ever seen. Disguised as a copy machine and weighing over 1,000 pounds, the device was placed on the second floor of the casino along with a ransom note demanding $3 million. The FBI evacuated the building and spent hours trying to disarm the bomb, but when they attempted to disable it using a controlled charge, the entire device detonated. The explosion damaged much of the building and caused over $18 million in damage, but miraculously no one was killed. Burgess was later arrested, convicted, and died while in prison. In January of 2024, 29-year-old Nolan Arbaugh became the first human to receive a Neuralink brain implant after being paralyzed in a diving accident. Though the surgery was celebrated as a milestone, things quickly unraveled. 85% of the device's threads retracted from his brain, crippling its function. Neuralink scrambled to deploy emergency software fixes just to keep it working, allowing Nolan to play chess and move a cursor with his thoughts. The surgery carried serious risks, including infection, brain damage, and long-term complications. Arbaugh's implant was never removed, and the company hasn't disclosed the full extent of its ongoing effects. In 2017, retired U.S. Army Colonel David Will Riggins was awarded $8.4 million in a defamation lawsuit after a woman publicly accused him of raping her decades earlier when they were cadets at West Point. Just as Riggins was being considered for promotion as Brigadier General, the accusation was posted on a blog, effectively derailing his military career. But an investigation soon found no supporting evidence, and a Virginia jury later determined the woman's claims were provably false. Although the final payout was reduced to around $2.3 million, Riggins said he was grateful to have his name cleared, even if the damage to his career couldn't be undone. When Alexander the Great died in 323 BC at the age of 32, his body reportedly showed no signs of decomposition for 6 days, astonishing the ancient Greeks and fueling the belief that he was a god. But modern medical experts have proposed a much darker explanation. Alexander may have suffered from Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that causes full body paralysis while leaving the person mentally aware. If true, it means he may have been mistakenly declared dead while still conscious, and was ultimately buried alive, fully aware of what was happening but unable to move or speak. In 1969, the Black Panthers launched a free breakfast program that fed thousands of hungry kids before school in the poorest black communities. But J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI saw it as a threat to national security, apparently fearing that it would make the Black Panthers look too humane. So in response, in multiple cities, police raided kitchens at dawn, tearing apart food supplies, and in some cases even urinating on the groceries, making it clear that feeding black children was more threatening than letting them starve. In 2008, 24-year-old real estate agent Lindsay Buziak was lured to a home in British Columbia by a mysterious couple using fake names and a prepaid burner phone. The woman who contacted her spoke with a strange fake-sounding accent and insisted that they were in a rush to buy $1 million home, but said they would only deal with Lindsay even though she was a newer agent. The call made her uneasy, and she confided in friends and family that something felt off. Out of caution, she asked her boyfriend to be nearby during the showing. But as soon as she entered the home with the supposed clients, she was brutally stabbed over 40 times. There were no signs of robbery or sexual assault, and nothing was damaged. Lindsay's boyfriend arrived minutes later and found her dying upstairs, but the killers had vanished. The burner phone used to set up the meeting was deactivated immediately after the murder. Despite public pleas, heavy media coverage, and theories ranging from drug-related retaliation to a personal hit, Lindsay's case still remains unsolved. In 2006, Ray Rivera vanished after receiving a sudden phone call and rushing out of his Baltimore home. Over a week later, his body was found in a locked conference room at the Belvedere Hotel, having somehow crashed through the roof from above. The hole he fell through was bizarrely placed, far too distant from any ledge to be reached by a typical jump, leading some to believe he may have been thrown off the roof or pushed from a higher level of the building. Even stranger, a cryptic note filled with movie references and secret society names was discovered taped behind his computer. The eerie case still remains officially unsolved. Paranormal investigator Dan Rivera was found dead in his hotel room while on the Devil's on the Run tour in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Best known for touring with the infamous Annabelle doll from The Conjuring, the 54-year-old had spent years investigating haunted locations and was a prominent figure in the New England Society for Psychic Research. His sudden death with no signs of foul play has fueled eerie speculation, given his close proximity to one of the world's most notorious possessed objects. As of now, the cause of death remains unknown, as Rivera's mysterious end has only deepened the legend surrounding Annabelle. On July 17, 2025, Felix Baumgartner, the Daredevil who once broke the sound barrier by jumping from the edge of space, was killed in a tragic paragliding crash in Italy at the age of 56. While piloting a motorized paraglider near a seaside resort, he reportedly may have suffered a cardiac event mid-air, causing the craft to spiral out of control before slamming into the hotel's pool area. The impact killed him instantly and injured a hotel worker with flying debris, sending her to the hospital with neck trauma, but she appears to be okay. Witnesses described a terrifying boom as the glider hit, followed by screams from stunned vacationers. Paramedics arrived quickly but were unable to revive him, and guests at the hotel were left stunned as rescue workers covered his body with a tarp near the wreckage. Hours before the fatal crash, he posted an Instagram story with the caption, "Too much wind," his eerie final message before the legendary thrill-seeker met a brutal end while doing what he loved. In 2020, Canadian actor Ryan Grantham, known for his roles in Riverdale and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, shot and killed his 64-year-old mother while she was playing piano in their home, then filmed the aftermath on a GoPro. Grantham then packed his car with guns, ammunition, Molotov cocktails, and a map to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's residence, allegedly planning to assassinate him. But instead, he drove to a police station and turned himself in. During the trial, it was revealed that Grantham was suffering from severe depression. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole in 14 years. In 1988, expert skydiver Ivan McGuire boarded a plane in North Carolina to film a routine jump from 10,000 feet. With over 800 jumps under his belt, he was calm, confident, and fully focused on capturing the perfect footage. His helmet camera recorded everything, his smooth exit from the plane, the free fall, and the other jumpers floating below. But partway through the descent, McGuire began frantically patting his back, expressing confusion that quickly turned to panic. Just seconds before impact, his voice can be heard yelling, "Oh my God, no!" He was apparently so focused on filming that he had jumped without a parachute. Young actor Cameron Boyce tragically died in his sleep on July 6, 2019 at just 20 years old from a seizure caused by epilepsy, a condition he'd been managing with treatment. His death was officially ruled as SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, a little-known fatal complication that occurs without warning, most commonly during sleep. Cameron had reportedly experienced only about 5 seizures throughout his life, all while sleeping, and his family had never even heard of SUDEP until after his sudden death. He was found unresponsive in his North Hollywood home, and there was nothing that paramedics could do once they arrived. Cameron had spent much of his young life fighting for others, raising millions to bring clean water to Africa, supporting homeless shelters, and using his platform to speak out against gun violence. In the wake of the tragedy, his family founded the Cameron Boyce Foundation to raise awareness about epilepsy and SUDEP, hoping to prevent others from suffering the same fate. Ted Cassidy, best known for playing Lurch in the original Addams Family, was 6 feet 9 inches tall. He died from a botched surgery to remove a tumor from his heart, which resulted from the condition of acromegaly that caused his iconic voice, facial structure, and towering height. After leasing the World Trade Center just weeks before 9/11, Larry Silverstein filed an insurance claim arguing that the attacks on the Twin Towers constituted 2 separate terrorist events, entitling him to double the $3.5 billion per occurrence payout. The case went to court, where the court agreed with Silverstein for 9 of the 20 insurance companies, forcing them to pay double. In total, Silverstein received around $4.55 billion for the collapse of the World Trade Center. While filming Black Panther and other Marvel movies, Chadwick Boseman was secretly undergoing intensive treatment for stage 3 colon cancer, enduring surgeries and constant chemotherapy between shoots. Even most of the cast and crew had no idea that Chadwick was sick. He kept his diagnosis completely private, sharing it only with a small circle of family, his producing partner, and a few close confidants. Despite the pain and exhaustion, Boseman still continued to visit children with cancer at St. Jude's Hospital. Many of the kids he visited passed away before Chadwick did, never knowing that their hero was also fighting the same battle. In November of 1990, Life magazine published this haunting photo of AIDS activist David Kirby on his deathbed, surrounded by his grieving family in an Ohio hospital. Captured by photographer Therese Frere, the image became known as the photo that changed the face of AIDS. It humanized the epidemic at a time when stigma and fear were rampant, showing the devastating personal toll of the disease. With his family's consent, the photo was shared globally, sparking empathy, outrage, and awareness, ultimately helping to shift the public perception of AIDS. Pamela Anderson contracted hepatitis C in the 90s after sharing a tattoo needle with her husband Tommy Lee, who never told her he had the deadly virus. Doctors warned her it could kill her within 10 years, and the virus slowly attacked her liver, while she suffered from chronic fatigue, weakness, and bouts of depression. At her lowest, she described feeling like her body was rotting from the inside, as the disease forced her out of the spotlight and into isolation. For over a decade, she lived with the fear of cancer or liver failure, until she was finally cured in 2015 by a breakthrough antiviral treatment. In the early 90s, Andrew Martinez became a bizarre campus icon at UC Berkeley for attending classes completely nude, claiming he was protesting what he saw as oppressive social norms. Nicknamed the Naked Guy, he was repeatedly arrested, eventually expelled, and banned from campus after the school changed its policies just to stop him. But behind the act was a deepening struggle with mental illness that was later diagnosed as schizophrenia. Over the next decade, his life unraveled into a cycle of homelessness, institutionalization, and jail time. Here are some morbid facts about King Tut. A virtual autopsy of King Tut showed that he had a club foot, a severe overbite, womanly hips, and enlarged breasts. Further evidence revealed that these deformities were the result of incest, since his parents were brother and sister. Inside the pharaoh's tomb, archaeologists found the mummified remains of 2 babies. They were most likely King Tut's stillborn twin daughters, one of whom was riddled with deformities just like her dad. King Tut is the only known mummy from ancient Egypt who was purposely mummified with an erection, which broke off soon after his discovery. King Tut's death remains a mystery, but theories range from a bone disorder, malaria, and even a hippo attack. Another theory is that he was run over by a chariot, since his body was found with multiple broken ribs, a shattered pelvis, and a broken leg. Not to mention his heart, sternum, and breastbone were all missing, adding to the intrigue of the boy king. Tila Tequila was one of the internet's first ever influencers, rising to fame on MySpace before landing an MTV dating show that made her a household name. But after the spotlight faded, her life spiraled into chaos, marked by heavy drug use, mental breakdowns, and increasingly disturbing behavior. She once claimed to have died and been resurrected, called herself the Queen of the Alt-Right, and posed in Nazi uniforms giving the Hitler salute in front of Auschwitz. After being banned from several platforms including Twitter and Facebook, Tila later declared herself a celestial being who was sent here to destroy Satan. In 1967, Singapore was gripped by a bizarre mass panic known as Coro, or genital retraction syndrome, where thousands of men became convinced their schlongolians were shrinking into their bodies and that they would die if it vanished completely. Fueled by rumors that tainted pork was to blame, Hospitals were flooded with terrified men clutching their groins, some even using clamps or strings to hold it in place. Over 400 cases were reported within just a few days. Pork sales plummeted, and public health officials had to step in to calm the chaos. In July of 2023, Australian woman Erin Patterson invited her ex-in-laws and their relatives over for lunch, serving them a homemade beef Wellington laced with one of the deadliest fungi on Earth, death cap mushrooms. Within a few days, 3 of them were dead from agonizing organ failure, and a 4th barely survived after a liver transplant. Patterson claimed it was a tragic accident, but investigators found damning evidence, including a food dehydrator tied to the poison and inconsistent stories about where the mushrooms came from. She was recently convicted of 3 counts of murder and likely faces life in prison. In the mid-1800s, women across the Western world wore massive crinolines, hoop skirts that ballooned outward in all directions, often made from highly flammable fabrics like cotton. The size made them elegant but deadly. They caught fire easily near candles or fireplaces, and the sheer width made them nearly impossible to escape the flames. Within just 2 months in 1863, 19 English women burnt to death after their dresses caught fire. By the end of the decade, more than 3,000 people had died as a result of crinoline fires. This is the grave of Elvis's twin brother Jesse, who was stillborn. Elvis would often tell his friends and family that he had a persistent feeling that Jesse was somehow with him throughout his life. Wherever he went, Elvis always wore the cross, the Star of David, and the Hebrew word Chai. This was so that when he died, he wouldn't miss out on heaven due to a technicality. But regardless, Elvis's struggle with drugs towards the end of his life was a losing battle. In the first 8 months of 1977 alone, Elvis's doctor prescribed him more than 10,000 doses of sedatives, amphetamines, and narcotics. This all resulted in his untimely death while sitting on the toilet at the young age of 42. His stool was so backed up from the drugs and his horrendous diet that he hadn't taken a dump in at least 4 months. Back in 1922, children suffering from diabetic ketoacidosis were kept in large wards. Grieving family members would visit their comatose children and sit by their beds, waiting for their inevitable deaths. But one day, 3 scientists walked into one of these wards and began injecting the children with a new purified extract called insulin. Before they had reached the last comatose patient, the first few that they injected started waking up, and a room of death turned into a place of joy. After surviving a fire, Taka the Shiba Inu is now a therapy dog for burn victims. These are some morbid facts about North Korea. North Korean hospitals are so underfunded that many operations are performed without anesthesia or antibiotics. To make matters worse, the same needles are often used for different patients, so a lot of people exit the hospital in worse shape than when they entered. North Korean law imposes a 3-generation punishment rule. If one person commits a crime, their entire bloodline, including the grandparents, parents, and children, are all sent to prison. When South Korea stopped sending fertilizer to North Korea, the country faced a national shortage. So every year since, citizens have to reach a quota of poop that they must donate to the state. North Koreans are raised to believe that their leaders are gods who can read their thoughts. This, along with extremely limited internet access, make it very difficult for citizens to realize how oppressive their government truly is. On 9/11, a guide dog named Roselle led a group of people, including her blind owner, down 78 flights of stairs before the North Tower collapsed. She only stopped briefly at one point to give kisses to a woman who was having a panic attack. These 2 human skeletons were discovered in a bin during an excavation in Iran dating back to 800 BC. They died in what appears to be a loving embrace and have remained that way for 2,800 years. Researchers claim that both skeletons were males based on dental evidence. In 1907, a Mexican railroad worker named Jesus Garcia jumped onto a train loaded with dynamite after realizing that the train was on fire. Knowing that an explosion was inevitable, he reversed the train at full steam for 4 miles until he was clear of the town. Moments afterward, the dynamite exploded, killing Jesus but sparing the town. Floyd and Violet Hartwig were married for 67 years and died while holding hands. They met in elementary school and exchanged over 100 love letters while Floyd served in World War II. In 2015, their hospice beds were pushed together so that they could spend their final moments holding hands. When Floyd passed away, Violet followed him just 5 hours later. A grieving father had this tombstone designed for his wheelchair-bound son to depict him as free from his earthly burdens. In 1959, police were called into a segregated library in South Carolina because a 9-year-old black boy refused to leave. He later got a PhD in physics from MIT, but died in 1986 as one of the astronauts on the Challenger. And the library that once refused to lend him books is now named after him.